Good morning, guys, and welcome to the Monday, May 27th episode of the MMAOB Daily Show with your host, Adam Martin. I'm here to talk just about the latest news in MMA, of course. Not too much happened over the weekend. There were a few things that were notable, so I'll get into them in a second. First and foremost, you can find me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin, so definitely give me a follow there. You can find this podcast on YouTube under the MMA Oddsbreaker channel. Of course, the 5 websites I write for currently, MMAOddsbreaker.com, SureDog.com, BJPen.com, MMAratings.net, MMAnews.com. So definitely check all those websites out. So let's just get right into the show, guys. First and foremost, I hope you had a great weekend. I had a pretty solid weekend myself. Had a bowling tournament Saturday. Did okay. Didn't make any money though, unfortunately. So maybe next time. Then I started my softball league Sunday, so I had 2 games. Killed it. I think I went like 7 for 8. So I was hitting it at like bombs every shot. It was great. Great to be back in softball. The summer's been phenomenal so far here in Toronto. Just beautiful weather. So definitely looking forward to playing the rest of the summer. But of course, you guys are here to talk about MMA, and so am I. So let's just get right into it today, guys. There really wasn't too much that happened, but the most notable story, of course, was a report yesterday from Ralph Mariano from Combate Globo down in Brazil that 4 fighters have been released from UFC. Actually, we can say 5 because Justin Willis was cut on Friday. I believe I talked about that last week. Aaron Bronstetter reported that. But since then, 4 more fighters have been cut by the UFC. BJPen.com, I wrote an article about that, so you can check that out there. You can read more about just some details about that. But let's just get right into it, guys. I mean, the first fighter that was cut and the most notable is definitely Elias Theodorou, Canadian fighter, former Ultimate Fighter winner. Elias was cut with an 8-3 record in the UFC. So kind of surprising because he had a very good record in the octagon. That's a winning record. Very reminiscent of John Fitch and Yushin Okami being cut, someone with not the most exciting style, but a winning record being released by the UFC. So since the cut, fans and media have really went after the UFC for this one. I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, first off, I like Elias. I've followed him for a long time. He was a Score Fighting Series alum, so I saw him fight years ago in the Score Fighting Series, well before the UFC. Also, he was in Bellator back in the day when they fought in Ontario, when they used to do shows here back in the Bjorn Rebbe days. So he's been around a long time. Obviously, he had a good run in the UFC. His record was very good. A couple losses there, but it's a solid competition. His last loss against Derek Brunson, of course, not a good fight. On the Party Shop podcast, I think it was the last one me and James did. There was a recap episode. I even said the UFC might cut him after this performance because it was such a bad performance and he just kept running away from the action. And that's not something anyone wants to see. When your own fans in Ottawa are booing you, that's a bad sign. Having said that, I'm still a little surprised the UFC went and actually did it because he was a top 15 ranked fighter. You don't see ranked fighters get released very often. So they clearly did not like his style. And really looking at his record, it's hard to blame the UFC matchmakers. They're trying to find exciting fighters, and Elias had gone to decision in 8 straight fights. Yes, he did lose to Brunson, who's a good fighter, but before that, the 3 wins he had, it's not like they were great fighters, like Trevor Smith, Dan Kelly. Like, these aren't great fighters. So he had some decent wins in the UFC. He started off his career in the UFC with 2 of his first 3 wins were by stoppage. So since then, it's just like been a point fighting version of Theodorou. And also in that win streak, I forgot to mention Eric Andrews, of course, in Toronto. Close fight, but he won that fight, and that's a big win for him. Obviously, Andrews is a solid fighter. So, Elias is a good fighter. I wouldn't say a great fighter, but a good fighter, and he knows how to win fights. But it wasn't enough for the UFC. They wanted guys that are going to be exciting, and they decided they were going to release them. So I feel bad for Elias because, again, I like him personally, and as he's like a Canadian ambassador of the sport. So as someone who's part of the Canadian MMA scene, it sucks to see a guy like that be released. But at the same time, from the UFC's point of view, I totally understand why they cut him because he just wasn't getting the job done. You got to be exciting. You have to finish fights. You have to get finished yourself. And he wasn't doing that. He wasn't willing to risk it. And I think that's what the UFC had an issue with. So, again, I'm sorry, Elias, you got cut, but I can see from the UFC's point of view why they cut you. That's just the truth. So I'd love to hear more about what you guys think about that. So if you want, leave a comment on the BJ Penn article, leave a comment here on YouTube. It's cool. I've seen what a lot of fans and media have said on Twitter. It is kind of funny, though, I will say this, that all of a sudden he has all these people saying that, like, oh, he shouldn't be cut, when they were the same ones saying he should be cut after that Brunson fight. So that's kind of funny, but that's how the MMA community works sometimes. They get a little, attached to someone once they're, in trouble with the UFC or whatever. So, again, sorry, Elias, he got cut, but I can see why the UFC cut him. There were 3 other cuts as well. Another top 15 fighter was actually two more were cut, but the first one was Wilson Hayes. Now, this sucks because I like the flyweight division, and losing Wilson Hayes, who's a former title challenger, is just another sign that the flyweights are being slowly pushed out. So that's definitely disappointing for Hayes. But he's lost four of his last five fights. He got knocked out by Alexander Petosha in his last fight. He's on a decline. He's in his mid-30s. His chin's going. He's another guy's been around a long time. Elite XC, Bellator. This guy's been around forever. So he had a shot in the UFC. He went to the title. They're slowly dissolving the flyweight division. So I can think all of us can understand why they released him. They're only down to 13 fighters now, by the way, in that division. So it's slowly going. You know, he's a ranked guy. I think he was like either top 10 or top 15 for sure, anyways. But, you know, when you're not winning fights, it justifies the decision a bit more. It's a little less controversial, I think, than Elias, because Elias had just lost one fight. Hayes has lost four of his last five. So, again, I could see why the UFC cut him. I personally would have given him another shot, but again, I'm not running the UFC, and they don't want the flyweight division anymore, so that's why they released him. Also, Eric Shelton is another top 15 fighter who got cut, another flyweight who was released. Now, Eric Shelton's case, he was only top 15 because that division only had 15 fighters, has 13 now. So there's not enough fighters to have a full rankings, which is very sad, actually. But Eric Shelton went 2-4 in the UFC. I don't even think he got a finish. He wasn't exciting. I mean, again, you know, he's a decent gatekeeper. He was a good test for the young up-and-comers, but they don't have young up-and-comers now. And he was too small to make bantamweight. So, you know, it sucks seeing guys lose their jobs. I'm not here to be like, oh, this guy should be cut because he sucks, or, you know, it's nice to see this guy get cut. But at the same time, the UFC needs to make these cuts because, and I said this in the BJ Penn article, the Contender Series guys are coming in soon. And, you know, this doesn't really include the flyweights. We know they're getting rid of that division. But in general, these Contender Series kids are coming in. I shouldn't say kids, just fighters in general, these older guys in the show. They're coming into the UFC. They need to have roster spots for these guys. And right now, we all know the UFC has too many roster spots. So there's too many roster spots tied up. So they have to make cuts. And unfortunately, guys like Sheldon they're just not good enough for the UFC. 2-4 is not going to cut it. So he was released. And the last guy that was released, not a ranked fighter by any means, Marcelo Golm, heavyweight, 1-3 record in the UFC. Very disappointing career by this guy in the UFC. I mean, he started off nice, won his first fight, and then downhill from there. Now, most UFC contracts are 4 fights, especially the entry-level deals. So he was probably out of his deal, and they just released him without re-signing him. But heavyweight's very shallow, so I did think that there was a chance they could keep him around just as fodder for someone like Greg Hardy to beat up. But then when I thought about that, believe he also trains with Greg Hardy at ATT. So maybe that's why they were just like, you know what, we can't even let Greg Hardy fight this guy because they're teammates. What's the point of keeping this guy around? So they released him too. So I don't think that's a bad cut by any means. 1-3 record, again, not a good record. It's not like Justin Willis, 4-1 record. That one's a little more controversial to me. But again, the UFC matchmakers have to like you. The fans have to like you. Guys like Willis and Theodore just weren't getting it done. They're winning lackluster decisions. They're losing lackluster decisions. That's not what fans are looking for. So, you know, again, it sucks to see guys lose their jobs, but from the UFC's point of view, you can definitely see why a lot of these guys are cut. Definitely some controversy for sure when you're cutting guys with losing records, but that happens. And again, from all the guys that were released recently, Justin Willis and Theodore, I believe, were the only guys with actual winning records. Hayes might have. I think he was like 6-6 or something, maybe 6-5. But, you know, again, he's an older guy on a losing streak, so I can see why he got cut. So as far as that goes, that's pretty much the main news of the weekend. One other thing that's worth speaking about is this awful story about Alex Oliveira, again, alleged assault of his wife in Rio de Janeiro. I'm just reading the article right now. Yeah, apparently – here, I'll just read the junkie story. Fernanda Pratis, she translated it. So it says, alleged incident took place Saturday morning. Ex-wife's statement said Oliveira was intoxicated when he showed up to meet her and her 5-month-old baby and left with the baby in his motorcycle. Also, allegedly assaulted her with punches and pulled her hair. Just terrible. I mean, honestly, just terrible. Again, alleged, and he's going to speak to the police today. Who knows? For what we've heard, Alex Oliveira has a lot of children from a lot of different women down there in Brazil. So I really don't think we know the full story here. There could be some details that are mixed up. but definitely not a good look for Alex Oliveira. And also Chris Rinney at Bloody Hell, what a great cartoon about that this morning. That guy's got some awesome cartoons, so definitely check that out. But again, just really disappointing news here, and we'll see what happens. Also, Alex Oliveira, it's worth mentioning, they sent a statement out, and it pretty much just says what I just said. So it says the UFC's the stories being circulated in the media about the incident involving UFC athlete Oliveira does not reflect the reality of the facts. The news is there's a warrant for him is false, and he'll meet with his lawyer along with meet the precinct chief in order to give his side of the story. So again, we don't know all the full facts of the story, and Oliveira's got a lot going on down there in Brazil. So we'll definitely have to wait and see what happens there. But again, no doubt about it, it's a bad look for sure. And I mean, if his talent up is true, they're going to have to cut him because it's a pretty bad story. As far as fight announcements go, only really one fight announcement. So the UFC announced that the main event of the prelims this weekend in Sweden is actually going to be this guy Sergey Kandozgo, and he's taking on Rostem Akman. So I believe he was supposed to originally fight Bartosz Fabinski, and now Kandozgo is taking on Akman. So Kandozgo, first off, I'm surprised this is the main event of the prelims because there are some more notable guys and bigger name fighters on the card, at least guys that have somewhat of a following. But Kandozgo is supposed to be a good prospect, 25-5-1 record, 27 years old, been fighting Russia for a long time, since 2011. Honestly, no real notable wins though, so that's a little strange. And he's doesn't have a great record. Like he's won his last 2 fights impressively, but before that lost a couple fights like against guys like Ben Alloway, who was cut from the UFC a long time ago. So maybe just the fact that he's exciting, like Michel Pereira, the UFC saw something here. But as far as his record goes recently, anyways, not great. And then Akman, 5-0. He's from Sweden. He's only started fighting in 2017, and since then he's picked up 5 wins. But again, not really over anyone notable. So we'll see what happens here. I'm going to preview the Sweden card on Wednesday. This will be one of the fights I preview. But again, it's a little strange that this is the prelim main event. When you have I'll give you an example, like Stevie Ray and Leonardo Santos, that could easily be the prelim. Santos has a really good record. Even Frank Camacho, who's always putting on good fights against Nick Hine. Even Darko Stosic against Devin Clark. Darko Stosic is a great prospect. So a little surprised by that. Again, card placement's not hugely important, especially in the prelims of a fight night event in Sweden. But just thought that was a little strange when they showed that in the broadcast last week. But anyways, it's good to see that there are 13 fights in that card. I'm looking forward to covering that fight for sure, dog. So that's about it, guys. Definitely hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions. Again, that's MMAOB, MMAOddsbreaker.com, Sherdog.com, MMAnews.com, MMAratings.net, and BJPenn.com. Those are the websites I write for. Definitely follow those websites. Keep reading our articles. And I'll be back tomorrow morning, guys. Hopefully some more news breaks, and I got some good stuff to talk about with you. But for now, signing off. Thanks again for checking in with the MMAOB Daily Show with your host, Adam Martin.